After the events at Murney 13, everyone knew that at some point in the future, the scientific study of the Mirium matter would continue. However, for many, the scale and potential consequences of such research were still overwhelming. Years after the Murney 13 incident, Project Babylon was initiated. An international research center was established with the singular goal of studying Mirium. Special attention was given to containing the destructive potential of the substance to prevent disasters like Murney 13 from happening again. The research center was built in a desolate, forgotten location, known only by the name of Azagir, the same place where it all began. The primary objective of Project Babylon was to further experiment with Mirium, particularly by exploring its connections to deeper subspace phases. These phases were believed to be intricately linked to the matter. Professor Merkelov, the scientist who had first discovered Mirium, was chosen to lead the project. A renowned expert, Merkelov had dedicated years of his life to researching the substance after the Murney 13 disaster. Yet, as he ventured deeper into the mysteries of Mirium, he came to understand the terrifying potential of the matter. Over time, he grew increasingly horrified by what he had uncovered, leading him to try and warn the higher-ups to halt the project. Unfortunately, despite his efforts, his warnings were ignored. Still, he held onto a faint hope that he might find a way to undo the damage that Mirium has caused. In his research, Merkelov uncovered a chilling discovery. During the war, the Germans had also encountered the Mirium matter and launched their own research program. Without their earlier breakthroughs, he would have spent far more time trying to understand its nature. The Germans have gained far deeper understanding of the Mirium in a fraction of the time. They developed advanced technologies, including Mirium collectors, tanks, and other weapons at a rapid pace. Some of their designs were even adopted by the Allies, while others were deemed so inhumane that they had to be destroyed. One of the most disturbing German projects Merkelov found in the archives was Operation Dark Edelweiss, a plan to build a Mirium bomb, the ultimate weapon. They conducted initial tests with low-power charge. While the destruction was minimal, the tests caused a chain reaction that affected all Mirium in a significant radius. As a result, the Mirium in the German research facility was deactivated, losing all its properties. Abandoning the bomb project, the Germans shifted focus to a new priority: using Miriam's subspace for transportation. According to the documents, they planned to build a network of transit bases within the subspace, called Dark Towers, throughout Europe and beyond. This would allow them to move forces and supplies quickly, attacking enemies from unexpected locations, behind enemy lines or in their capitals. The Blitzkrieg strategy perfected. Fortunately, the Germans were unable to complete this plan. They lacked the necessary exit technology to open stable rifts, relying on a beacon to connect to the subspace. That beacon was destroyed during Allied bombings nearing the end of the war, and most of the German scientists and engineers working on the project were killed or went missing. The fate of those already in the subspace bases remained a mystery. Appalled by these discoveries and the knowledge that the military leaders were still eager to implement the Germans' inhumane breakthroughs, Merkelov became more desperate. Although the German research was allegedly destroyed, he suspected there were backup copies of their work hidden somewhere. He repeatedly warned the management of Project Babylon to halt their progress and cease further experiments with Mirium, but each time they dismissed him as a scientist lost in his own theories. They failed to see the growing threat that loomed over humanity. The military now had more Mirium technology than ever before, and they were unwilling to abandon it. They wanted more. Merkelov tried to make them understand. Mirium was not a tool to be wielded. It was a force that cannot be controlled. It seemed to possess its own will, its own goals, and every attempt to exploit it only provoked it further. But the higher-ups were blinded by their hunger for power. They didn't see where their actions would lead. Finally, Merkelov reached a breaking point. The time for warnings had passed. He realized that he had to act before it was too late. He would find a way to stop the insanity and save humanity from itself. With the information he had uncovered about Operation Dark Edelweiss, Merkelov knew what he had to do: create a Mirium bomb, a weapon powerful enough to destroy Mirium itself. With enough matter, it will detonate with the power strong enough for a chain reaction to deactivate Mirium across the entire planet with minimal destruction. However, knowing that the High Command would never approve such a thing, he began building the weapon in secret, hidden within the Magnus Prime. The Magnus Prime was an enhanced version of the device used in Myrni 13, capable of storing Mirium and facilitating transitions between subspace phases. For the military, it was an essential tool for accessing the subspace, but Merkelov knew it could also be the key to destroying Mirium. With only a little more time, the bomb would be ready, though the risks were enormous and the consequences unpredictable. Merkelov believed it was still the only way to stop the madness. He was ready to become whatever he needed to be: a scientist, a soldier, and perhaps even a villain in some eyes. Someone to do the thing that's necessary. As Merkelov continues his research for the bomb, he began to pick up strange radio signals, distorted, barely discernible, yet unmistakably human. Among the interference, he heard a haunting sound of a child's voice singing in an unfamiliar language. He named the signal Gretchen and attempted to trace its source. The deeper he delved into the subspace, the stronger the signal became. Eventually, it led him to a German base hidden in one of the deepest phases, right beneath the Babylon Research Center. The base was preserved in time, with all its vehicles, weapons, and perhaps even people still intact since the war. Merkelov briefly considered reporting the discovery to the higher-ups, but soon realized that it could be the key to solving his problem. He could establish contact with the Germans and make them work for him. He could acquire the Mirium he needed to complete the bomb. After successfully making contact with the German base, Merkelov learned that they have developed a modified version of the Enigma cipher to protect their communications. The original Enigma cipher was widely used by the German military during the war, and with the modifications, the contents of the messages between Merkelov and the Germans could remain a secret if they were to be intercepted. However, during one of their exchanges, Merkelov made a critical error. Believing he could outwit the Germans and use them to destroy Mirium, he unknowingly played right into their hands. The Germans had planned this all along. They had used Merkelov's pride and desperation against them. When he sent a tank with a relay device to their base, they used it to open the rift and establish a beacon in our world. The consequences were devastating. The ghosts of the past had returned, ready to sow chaos and destruction. Through the rifts, the German forces began to invade the higher phases, bringing with them a massive platoons of echo tanks. Tanks that had been absorbed into the anomaly and later converted by the Germans. As the echo tanks advanced on the Babylon facility, the situation grew increasingly dire. A veteran tank commander, part of Babylon's defense force, recorded his observations as the chaos unfolded. Initially, the echo tanks were disoriented, but they quickly regrouped and launched a relentless assault. Despite reinforcements arriving the next morning, the situation was worsening. The veterans soon realized that the echo tanks were not acting randomly. They were being controlled, perhaps by the Germans still trapped in the subspace. The commander believed that the only way to stop this invasion was to go deeper into the subspace and uncover the source of the threat. But they weren't ready for what lay ahead. During a skirmish, the commander encountered an echo tank that had been occupied by a human. Inside, he found a person wearing a strange helmet integrated with the tank's systems. This revelation was horrifying. The Germans had evolved within the anomaly, fusing human personnel with the tanks themselves. As the commander attempted to free the occupant, the tank began to reactivate its systems. The commander was overwhelmed by strange voices in a German-like language, warning or calling him. He collapsed, and when he regained consciousness, he was told that none of what he had witnessed had happened. The tank had vanished, as it always did, and his encounter was dismissed as a hallucination caused by Mirium exposure. Meanwhile, the counterintelligence unit at the facility intercepted the modified messages between Merkulov and the Germans at their secret base. Although those experts could only conclude that there were messages being transmitted to or through the subspace, they still sounded the alarm bells at the facility, starting a serious investigations as it was suggested that there was an enemy agent inside the Babylon Research Center that caused an information leak. The investigation led towards an interrogation with Merkulov, who acted as an annoyed scientist who gave a more reasonable explanation. He told them that the messages work differently inside the anomaly. They are interference, reflections, or echoes over the radio from past times. He then scolded the investigators for wasting time by going on a witch hunt against their own people instead of focusing on the real threat. Even though he meant every word that he was saying, deep down he felt the guilt for trying to divert suspicion from him. As the invasion grew more intense, Merkulov's mental state deteriorated. The stress of his work on the Magnus Prime, coupled with the chaos outside, took its toll. Still, the veteran tank commanders trusted him, knowing he was their last hope. But the professor's final days were shrouded in mystery. He was found dead, and an investigation into his death revealed disturbing clues, evidence of a third party manipulating him for their own purposes. Reports concluded that it wasn't a suicide, neither was it caused by an accident. All evidence points to premeditated murder. It was never discovered who murdered Merkulov. It could have been the Germans trying to stop him before his counterattack, or the higher-ups called his communications to the Germans, or knew his intentions with the bomb, also wanting to stop him from activating it. In the end, Merkelov had never finished his work on the bomb, but before his death he left a message detailing his final plan. The key to ending the invasion was to retrieve the relay tank that had been sent to the German base. With it, the path could be closed, and with the Mirium gathered by the tank, it would be enough to activate the bomb. The military moved quickly to execute Merkelov's plan. A detachment of Babylon's best tankers fought their way into the deepest subspace phases, facing off against the most powerful echo tanks encountered so far. But the final battle occurred near the German base, where they encountered the formidable Stormbringer, the flagship of the echo tank's forces. After a fierce battle, the special squad succeeded in retrieving the relay tank. With the tank in hand, the operation was a success. The passage was closed, the rift sealed, and the enemy was no longer able to open new passages, now trapped in the subspace. However, Merkelov's final request to detonate the bomb was ignored. Instead, the Babylon Research Center was placed under the control of the military committee, along with all of Professor Merkelov's developments, the relay tank and the Mirium bomb. The committee gave the command to strengthen the defenses at the research facility and other potential points where an invasion could occur. Also, the command was given for the constant surveillance of the subspace for any sign of new enemy activity, and finally the command to start to prepare plans for a potential counter-offensive into the subspace to finally destroy the German base.